Here we are, the moment we have all looked forward to, the discussion of Roger Smith, the negotiator himself. Now, approaching this topic was of course daunting, seeing that Roger Smith is, well, the main character, and of course gets the most screen time for this reason. He is the pilot of the Big O, the one entrusted to stop Alex Rosewater, the one who talks down Big Venus and Angel, all-around cool dude, and of course, the one who negotiates. He is an honorable and upstanding man, one who plays by his own rules, but always for the greater good. And he is the one which will be discussed today. Now, of course, we will start with Roger's significance to the plot. You see, the series starts with him negotiating the release of a kidnapped Dorothy. This starts a chain of events which sees the two go on several wacky adventures up until episode 12. While these are all standalone, they are still critical as they let us get to know Roger and his views, and his relationships with those around him. Over time, he grows closer with all those around him, and his views start to change a bit. More on this later. Anyways, when the quote main plot starts, Roger is tasked to find who has killed several tomatoes, that is, the children Gordon is said to have given memories to. This leads to him finding a copy of Gordon Rosewater's prophetic book, Metropolis, and then he talks to Gordon, who himself says the book is full of lies. This pressure, combined with the pressure of having to fight several giant robots at once, leads Roger to have a sort of crisis. He has a crisis over not knowing his past, and now that he knows that there was some kind of past, feels that this is a very important thing that he's kind of glossed over. However, after a psychological journey, he reassures himself, saying that he is him, and he embraces his role, and wins the fight. After a few more standalone adventures, the Union plot kicks off around episode 20, and Roger positions himself to protect the city, no matter what, no matter his past and no matter those who would come to harm him. This means defeating both the Union and Alex Rosewater. Although he has some issues doing this, he eventually succeeds and manages to negotiate with Angel herself, and convinces her to reset the world, as opposed to completely destroying it. In the end, he helps everyone come to terms. And coming to terms is what Roger Smith is really all about. You see, when I say that, I don't just mean between clients, and I don't mean between clients and groups of companies or organizations. I mean between himself and people and the world at large. You see, Roger is the character which represents balance and compromise. Not just between people, but people in the world. And the truth, really. He is, as the series portrays him, this character which greatly represents the idea of balance. He accepts that there is a greater truth, and he doesn't quite understand it, but he respects it. This is shown by the respect Big O and he have for each other. And, after his initial crisis over not knowing the past, the importance of memories. At the same time, though, Roger also knows and accepts that he can mold his truth and therefore destiny. He knows that while he is only human and cannot make or break truth, he can still shape the world around him for the better. This is a healthy approach to the daunting nature of life. He accepts his humanity, embraces it, and changes the unpleasant things he can. Though he accepts those he cannot, and adapts to them. An example of this is that there is an unpleasant truth that an enemy big or other monster could harm the city and destroy lives. He changes this truth using the Big O to protect the city on his own initiative. Meanwhile, an example of an adaptation to an unpleasant truth he cannot change is how Roger slowly learns to accept the fact that the book Metropolis is incomplete. At first, he is distraught over this. He cannot handle the idea that all of a sudden his past was important, but it was lost forever. Over time, though, he gets over this, and comes to accept it. He realizes that even if he doesn't remember his past, that doesn't necessarily change his future. He is overwhelmed in his crisis, but hunkers down and changes his response to this truth. He now accepts it and is resolved that it won't stop him from continuing being him, because it never did before. On the topic of being him, one of Roger's most endearing traits is how assured he is of himself. I do not mean arrogant, I mean confident. That is to say, he is a man who knows who he is, what he wants, and how he feels, but is in touch enough with his feelings and the world, and has enough self-control to pursue all of this in a healthy way. Think of this as a distinction between confidence and arrogance. He's a confident man, and he knows he is him. He lives by his own truths, his own rules, his code, and represents a healthy love of one's own ideals. He uses the agency given to him to exercise his views and apply them to himself, but he doesn't force them upon others in any egregious way. In this way, he is true to himself, and this manifests in a healthy confidence which helps him get the job done. He shows that the source of true confidence should always be from oneself, and it should be held regardless of what others hold you as. It's obvious that many don't necessarily hold him in very high regard, but he never lets this get him down. His crisis of self after seeing an incomplete past only reinforces this, as though it initially bogs him down. It shows him that regardless of his past, regardless of anything, he's him. There's only one of him, so he better own it and embrace it. Be the best him he can be. And it's do it for the greater good. It is shown that this is the healthiest approach to life, adapting, and using your agency to help you adapt, and change any unpleasant truth that you can and is within your power to do so. This healthy confidence and approach helps Roger be a team player. He knows that while he can do a lot, he can't do everything. He needs the people around him and their help too. In fact, this common respect is one of his greatest strengths. It ensures those close to him are always willing to help, and this kind of secures him. By fostering respect and compassion, he gains the respect and compassion of others, and a good deal of help too. This is most obvious with Big O itself. You see, Roger is the first to consider the Bigs as more than just machines. He acknowledges and respects Big O, and for this reason Big O lends him its power and strives to protect him. Roger knows that he is human, and therefore cannot do everything. Instead, he relies on his team, and in return tries to protect them. He is connected to them. He is rewarded for this too, and even forms a pseudo-family of all those around him. All of this strengthens him greatly, even if it's not initially obvious. By seeking to gradually evolve and push his boundaries, as opposed to seeking everything at once or imposing his will on everything, he manages to not lose himself, and stay true to himself. While Schwarzwald is lost to obsession, and Alex his lust for power, Roger survives and grows, and never loses himself. Sure, he has moments of doubt and crisis, but he always rebounds from these and grows firmer in his convictions. He accepts his limitations, and while trying to pass them, does so in a very healthy and gradual manner. This gradual evolution manifests itself in his views and how they change over time. For this part, we will discuss his view on two things: memories / the past, and Dorothy. Initially, Roger tends to question the larger concepts of the world around him. And by question them, I mean not at all. He sees them as kind of pointless. He knows what he wants to do, and he's going to do that. He's going to keep his head down. And this in turn limits him to an extent, and it makes him seem oddly disconnected to the world around him when we start the series. He initially just seems kind of there, doing his own thing, not really caring for the greater world. He initially sees memories as information which may be detrimental to the needs of today, and because he does not want to risk derailing anything today, even if it might be better for the long-term outlook, he sees memories as something to be discarded. Nagging feelings which would only weigh him down. He's mostly fine with living with no past at this point. In fact, one of his initial rules is to ignore any past which might come up, and for the most part just sees memories as a distraction from what needs to happen today. He lives by the truth that today is today, and that's where he lives. Over time, however, Roger sees the fault in this. He sees that memories are actually critical to human bonds, and context, and history, and what makes us us, and he starts to see the past as more than nothing. He goes a little overboard with this, however, and this causes a few mental episodes, but he overcomes this. Eventually, he finds a balance between valuing the past too little and too much, and takes a very pragmatic view of this. He knows that regardless of the past, he cannot change it. He accepts that it's made him who he is today, but he also knows that it's important for the sake of context and history. He comes to terms with the fact that he doesn't know his, but, even if it has shaped him, he is who he is now, so he doesn't need it as much as he initially thought he did. He comes to terms with this, and he comes to the conclusion that it's led to him being himself at this moment, and that person is one that should be embraced. Another topic on which Roger's view changes is Dorothy. When she first joins him, he initially seems annoyed and kind of bothered that this android just kind of tacked herself on. He rejects that they could have anything human. He rejects the idea that androids are anything more than pre-programmed machines. And he continues to assert this for the beginning of the series. As time progresses, however, he realizes that maybe all her blunt expressions aren't just pre-programmed responses. Maybe there is humanity in there. Maybe there is agency and free will. He soon sees Dorothy as basically human, and eventually even grows to cherish her in some way, to accept someone that he did not initially understand or perhaps respect, overcoming his own biases and seeing that, people are basically the same and worthy of respect. A real-world example of this would be like getting to know someone from a religious group or ethnic group or any group, really, and overcoming your initial view of whatever you had on them and realizing, yeah, we're basically the same. But while Roger's views change over time, he never strays too far. He stays true to himself, and his confidence and the support that this affords him from others allows him to grow as a character. He remains himself, just a more educated and open-minded version. He embraces himself, and this gives him the energy needed to grow as a person and persevere. You see, Roger is cool because he makes himself cool. He holds himself to his own views and styles and self, and people just tend to respect that kind of authenticity. He is cool because he struck a balance between himself and the truths of the world, great and small, within and without of his control. He is cool because he, on his own terms, has come to terms.